Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining from. Welcome to the second session of CI/CD Summer School. And if you're looking at the description for this event, you see session one. That's because we started counting from zero. So this is the second one, but the name is session one. I'm your host, Michael Jenkins. I'm a LinkedIn Learning author, and I specialize in process automation, CI/CD, DevOps, SRE, all that good stuff. And I enjoy sharing my knowledge through online courses and interactions like this live stream. So I thank you, or rather, I thank you for being here and also welcome you to this session. Let's get right into it. We'll be a little bit interactive today. If you want to drop into the chat where you're joining from, I really appreciate hearing where people are connecting from, whether you're watching live or you're watching the replay. If you can, drop something in the chat to let me know where you're listening from. I personally am joining you from Southern California, right outside Los Angeles. Weather's beautiful today. This is not the beach that's closest to me. This is a stock image. I'm not sure where it came from, but not too far from the beach. So maybe I'll get a chance to kind of enjoy that this weekend. It is summertime. So we should be enjoying the outdoors or the facilities that we can access. But I did get a message from somebody that was joining from Australia. It's not summer in Australia. So that's just something to keep in mind. When we're enjoying summer here in the Northern Hemisphere, in the Southern Hemisphere, it is indeed winter. So their weather is a little bit different. Want to say what's up to Frosty. If I recall correctly, you're joining us from Minneapolis, Minnesota, or somewhere in the Minnesota area. Thank you again for joining us. Shout out to Aaron joining us from Memphis, Tennessee. And then we got Blake joining us from Memphis, Tennessee also. Okay, or the folks down in Memphis, they're doing the thing, right? Thank you all for joining us today. I really, really do appreciate it. Frosty did confirm she's joining from Minneapolis, Minnesota. Thanks for joining. I'm going to go ahead and get right into it. Well, you know what? I think we're not going to get right into it. Let me get my slides together here. Let's see. I think this is the one. So some of the feedback I got from the last session that there was folks really appreciated some of the resources that I shared. I gave a shout out to Women in Linux, Tech Coach Ralph, GPS, Samira Dolan, Ray Villalobos. These are the people that I follow, other content creators, and I really enjoy consuming the content that they put on either through LinkedIn Learning, YouTube, and so on. So I wanted to continue that trend and share a couple other folks that I follow, and maybe you'll find some benefit in following them as well. So the first one I want to share is Fekayo Adepojo, also known as Dev Talk with FK. You can find him on YouTube. He is also a LinkedIn Learning instructor, and he covers content or topics in web development, software engineering, and how to sustain your career in those areas. So you might see a trend here if you joined me last week. A couple of folks that I follow on YouTube are also kind of in this same, they follow the same genre, but in different spaces. So Tech Coach Ralph, he's in QA, GPS, she covers cloud, and then FK, he covers software engineering and web development. But they all sort of have that career underlying focus, right? They're talking about the craft, but they're also talking about how to sustain your career in pursuit of that craft. So I really like FK for the content that he shares. He has a great sense of humor and really shares things in a relatable way. And I guess, I don't know if you can see my mouse on here. Yeah, I'm sure you can't, but the second video from the left where it says the A in AI, intelligence without a soul, check that video out, because I mean, AI, it's everywhere, right? But he's got some really interesting points to make as far as the artificial component of artificial intelligence. So definitely check that out. That's one of my favorite videos there that he's published of late. I also mentioned last session that I'm an avid podcast listener. I've got too many podcasts probably in my queue to mention them all, but I'm going to pick out some as we go through this series. And one of the ones that I listen to and look forward to every week is the Change Log. So the Change Log with Adam Stacoviak and Jared Santo, they are like the OG news podcast for all things technical, all things digital. And what I really appreciate about them is they have news from different spaces with a focus on technology. So they'll cover stuff from open source, they'll have topics from the cloud, they'll talk about home lab. And the really, really cool thing is they will bring people onto the show and interview them from like everywhere. They've had Kelsey Hightower on, and I forget the gentleman's name, but the author behind Curl, which is like one of the tools that I use almost every day in my work. So it's just like really kind of cool insights like that, opportunities like that. So this is like my weekly news for software. And they also have a news segment. The interview shows are long. They might be an hour, sometimes up to maybe 2 hours long, but the content is riveting. It kind of keeps me hooked onto it. But they also have a news show, which is shorter. It's maybe like less than 5 minutes, but it hits the really, really hot topics that are happening in software development, web development, and technology topics in the industry. So I really do appreciate the changelog for that. They also have technology specific podcasts. If you don't want to get this sort of interview focus or industry-wide coverage, they've got the Golang podcast. They've got a podcast on JavaScript, and they also have a podcast on, you guessed it, artificial intelligence. Everybody's talking about it, right? So go to changelog.com, check out this podcast, but also check out some of the other podcasts that they have to offer. I'm sure you'll find something there that interests you. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and get into this session with the review of what we did last week, which was the first day of school. So again, welcome here to this next session. So the homework for last week was totally easy, right? All you had to do was leave a comment or reach out to me, whatever the case is, about topics you want to discuss. If you took one of my courses, if you had a question, you could share a question, and we'll get to that as we go, as it applies to the topics that we're discussing that week. And also the key component to the homework from last week was to register for this session. So if you're here today on the live stream, easy A, you got it. And if you're watching it on the replay, then you also are getting an A for this particular assignment. Done. Congratulations, you got it. You're already at a 4.0 for CI/CD Summer School. See how easy that was? Okay, let's go on to the next one. So yeah, let's get into the meat of this particular session, session 1, 3 essential CI/CD facts. All right, next slide. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to break down each of the components of CI/CD. And we'll start with CI, which is continuous integration, CD, which is continuous delivery. And there's only 2 sort of acronyms in CI/CD, but we have a third one that's sort of hidden up in there. They kind of duplicate the CD, which is the last one, continuous deployment. So let's break down each of these, and then we're going to sort of distill a core element of each of these tenets of CI/CD. And let's start with continuous integration, first part of this. So in CI, the integration part of it, and I guess the continuous part of it, let's talk about that. It's something that's ongoing. It's happening often, maybe every day. In some teams, it could be happening every hour. But the integration part is the code that's being added to a central location. Typically, it's a code repository, GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket. It's the place where the code is stored, right? So the developers that are working on these features or on these applications, there may be teams of multiple developers. And what they'll do is on a regular basis, check their code into the same place, and it integrates, or rather they're mixing their code with code that already exists. That's the key to that integration part, right? That's explicitly what that integration means. At the same time that the code is being integrated or brought together, we have workflows that'll run automatically to bring some sort of uh, overview of this code that's being brought together. Some of these processes include linting and testing. Now, linting, if you're not familiar with that term, it's basically making sure your code applies to some particular standard. For example, you could say, for all the code in our code base, no line shall be longer than 80 characters, something like that. I usually go for 120 characters in my code. So, hey, to each his own, right? But you'll have a process that runs to say, hey, your code either does match this linting standard or it doesn't. Or you may also run some tests. A lot of code will have test suites that developers put together to test the functions, test the features. And at this point in the software development process, these tests can be run quickly. Usually they can be run, say, less than a minute, sometimes maybe a few seconds. But these tests can be run quickly, and that's key because this integration, if it's happening often, every hour, every day or so, then you need for those tests to be able to run quickly so you can get that feedback, so you can get those results back. So the one fact, or the essential fact that we'll distill from this particular process, continuous integration, that automation finds errors early in the development process. And the key to that is, if we find errors here, whether the code doesn't match a format that we know might cause errors down the road, or when tests fail because a feature wasn't implemented correctly, then we could fix that problem quickly, right? We can resolve that problem before we get down the road, when that software is actually deployed and out running somewhere, and it's a heavier lift, or it's more expensive in time or money or whatever the case is, to resolve that problem. So integration is key to finding errors early and fixing them before the fix becomes more expensive. All right, let's move on to the first CD1, continuous delivery. Now, in CD, software is automatically processed some way. You might say it's compiled, you might say it's packaged, but there's some sort of process that goes on to produce an artifact. After that artifact is created, it's stored somewhere. Okay, let's talk about the artifact. It could be some sort of binary, like an executable. If you're running on Windows, if you're building .NET applications that compile to an exe, then it might be some sort of binary package that runs on your system. It could be a library that you're calling from some sort of Linux application, or any operating system or programming language is going to have libraries. But you see what I mean? It's like, it's the code that's been compiled to the actual byte format that can be applied to wherever it's intended to be used. Sometimes it might just be an archive. We might just take a whole bunch of files and bundle them together so some other executable can manage this archive. Jar files are great for Java applications. Tar files, when you want to, on a Linux side, just kind of bundle stuff up. Or zip file, which is a very popular format across platforms. Macs, Linux, Windows, they're all using zip archives to compress files, store them together, and then transport that single file across file systems instead of having to work with multiple files. More popularly, though, in the delivery process, we are creating container images. So we're using a Docker file or some sort of some other description of the application to create a binary, or this byte-based file that can run in a container platform like ECS or Elastic Container Service on AWS, or Kubernetes on just about any cloud platform that you might want to tap into. So container images are a key artifact, or a more very popular artifact for this delivery process. And I don't go into the storage here, but just say for the storage part, we're setting it in a file system somewhere where it can be accessed by whoever needs to use that package. A lot of different programming languages have their own sort of registry or repository format. Container images, they have registries that you can tap into, but it sits somewhere until we need to use it. So that kind of gives us that second essential fact that we need to sort of tap into for for CD, the CD1, continuous delivery, and that the automation that we have in place for our workflows, it creates an artifact that's ready to go anytime. The software, the files, they've been processed, they've been distilled into this executable, this binary, and it's ready to go. We can grab it and use it whenever we need to. And I'll just stop here to just kind of I guess ping for questions too. What sort of binaries or what sort of packages are you all delivering? Are you building Python packages, Ruby gems, Java jars? I'm trying to think of some more. I don't know what the Golang libraries are called, but for me, I like to do container images because they're so portable. Usually when I'm working with software on my local system, I can run, the same process. I can run, Docker desktop or Orb stack or whatever your preferred local container platform is. I can run that container image just like it's going to run in production. So I can do all kinds of testing with the software itself. Maybe not at the scale. I won't have the same sort of load that the production system might be under, but I love working with container images locally just because it feels more like I'm working with a live system without such a heavy lift. All I need is Docker desktop, Orb stack, my Docker file, and I'm good to go. All right, let's go to the next one, the CI, or rather the CD2 in this, which is continuous deployment. Okay, so we've got the delivery portion. The delivery puts this artifact somewhere where it can be accessed, right? And from that point of access, we can use it however we need to use it. We're downloading an exe. Maybe we're putting a container image into a container runtime, and we're accessing the application that way. And that's exactly what the deployment process does. It takes this artifact that's been tested, packaged, and it puts it in place where it's actually being used. Now, I have this next bullet because depending on the binary that we're working with, this artifact that we're working with, deployment can mean a lot of different things, right? The delivery for a Windows exe and the deployment is a lot different than a container image for a web application, for example. So in the delivery portion, the exe is going to put into a place where you can download. For the container image, it's being put into a container registry. And then when we deploy, and following the same example, when we deploy that exe, somebody's downloading it to their system. And then they're, running that executable and clicking next to install it, or whatever the case is. And then they actually run the application. That's the deployment for that exe. For a container image, though, we're picking up the image and we're putting it into the container runtime. More than likely, we have to attach some configuration to that image to run in the specific environment. But there's almost like a heavier lift to that deployment, right? Because there's a lot of stuff that you have to know about how that image is going to run before you can put it in place to allow it to actually do what it's intended to do. So that's why I say software can be deployed in a lot of different ways. But the key is that the automation for our deployment is reliable, and if it's continuous, it's done without human interaction. And that's where the testing really comes into play, because what happens in a truly continuous deployment workflow is that the deployment is gated by a test. If the test passes, then the software is allowed to, or rather the workflow is allowed to continue, and that artifact is deployed. If the tests fail, then maybe there's some sort of notification that goes back to the developer, goes back to the ops team to say, hey, something happened with this deployment. Maybe you should take a look at it. But otherwise, you might not even know or even care about your stuff being deployed, because these tests that you put into place are reliable. They're testing exactly what needs to be tested for the intended environment. And that code goes out the door and you're done. You're moving on to the next feature. So the fact that we're drawing from this particular step is that automation is in place to reliably deploy the artifact to where it needs to run. I'm going to pause here for a second. We got a couple comments that I wanted to pull out. We got Frosty saying she likes Docker Desktop and GKE. Okay, I have not messed around with Google Kubernetes engine. I've mostly been on the Amazon and the Azure side, but I'm hoping to get over to GKE because that's like the home of Kubernetes, right? That's literally where Kubernetes came from. So I'm really interested in checking out GKE. I also want to give a shout out to Samuel joining us from Cameroon. Thank you again. I know it's, I believe it's Friday evening over there, right? So thank you for spending your Friday evening with us here in this session of CI/CD Summer School. Okay, let's go to the next slide where I think what we'll do is sort of review all of these facts here. So the first fact that we pulled from CI is that automation finds errors early in the development process. We can fix these errors quickly and cheaply. And when I say cheaply, that's in terms of time, money, CPU time, server hours, whatever it takes. It's much more difficult to fix errors when they're already in place, as opposed to when we can get them in this particular part, when the code is still soft, when it hasn't been processed into an artifact. Which leads us to our second fact and the second step in this workflow, CD, which is our delivery, CD1, I like to call it. And that's when automation gives us the artifact. Like the workflow runs, it does what it needs to do to compile, compress, contain, whatever the case is. And I like that alliteration there, compile, compress, contain. I didn't even know that was going to come out like that. But whatever the case, the delivery gives us this artifact that's ready to go at any time. And then that leads us to the second CD, CD2, or continuous deployment. And that's when the automation takes the artifact and very reliably, based on tests or some sort of conditions that we've defined, and puts it in place without us even having to touch anything. So if you're looking at these facts, there's probably, and it's plain as day, that there's like a key element across all of these things: CI, CD1, and CD2, right? Oh, but, and this isn't the but, this is the and, that there's yet another fact. I know what the topic for this session is three being the key there, essential facts for CI/CD, but we're going to get yet another fact. And that is automation is the key to our CI/CD processes, or in this case, as the slide shows, CI/CD processes being effective. We can't have our continuous part of it without there being some like really like dope and just kind of key automation in there, right? And I like this graphic because, in my opinion, the key to the automation is you as the developer, as the DevOps practitioner, as the SRE that's monitoring things to make sure that everything's running smoothly. Because we can have all these systems, all these CI/CD systems, but those systems really don't mean anything unless we, as the operator, provide the automation, provide the direction for that system to execute, right? So we depend on CI, CD, and CD to run reliably and to apply our processes. But unless we dictate what those processes are, then automation, or rather those processes are kind of for naught, right? And I think the key for this is you can go into just about any CI system worth its salt, and you can be given some templates for CI. And everything's pretty standard in those cases, right? But I bet you for your particular project, and you'll see this much more as you go into enterprise, you as the operator are going to have to inject some business sense, some logic. This is where you apply your craft as an automator, because these projects, they're all different, right? No two projects are the same. They're going to be either compiled differently, linted differently, tested differently. delivered differently. We talked about binaries and all the different ways that we can work with them, and or they're going to be deployed differently, right? So that's where you, as the operator, as the craft of the craft person, the artisan of CI/CD, really inject your skills to orchestrate integration, orchestrate delivery, and to orchestrate deployment. So the bonus fact, and yes, Frosty, we did have a bonus fact coming out of these 3 facts. So really it's 4 essential facts, is that automation is the key. We have to know really how to tap into the automation behind these processes that basically put our software in place. All right, let's go to the next slide. So yeah, we're already at the end of the session. Like I said, if you join me in session 0, which is the first session, I'm not going to hold you long. We're going to hit these topics hard and fast, and then jump right into some exercises that we can use to put to reinforce these thoughts and put them into practice. So for this particular session's homework, I want you to think about some tasks that you can automate in CI/CD. If you got some software or some projects that you're working with, think how you can run tests and run those tests automatically. If you need to update some external system, or some system that's sort of outside the flow of your software being processed in CI/CD, think about how you can update that system as a part of your maybe your delivery workflow, right? Maybe there's a email that you can send to say, hey, this version of the code is ready. Hey, try that out. Or maybe there's some documentation that you can update. Maybe there's a list of available versions for a package that you can add to or append to let folks know that browse this documentation. And documentation, that's difficult, right? Because one of the sore spots of projects, particularly in some cases open source projects, is that the documentation lags behind the actual code, right? But we have tools that help us read the code, see what the code does, and then update the documentation accordingly, right? So maybe there's some ways that you can look at projects that you're working in and seeing how the documentation is lagging, and maybe bring that documentation up to date as a part of your CI/CD workflow. Okay, so that's kind of like the brain part of this homework assignment, right? But where I actually want to put some rubber to the road, I want you to review some GitHub Actions workflow. The first one that I want you to take a look at, totally easy. It's Hello World written in Python, right? It's very, very light lift. After you take a look at that, I want you to go beast mode, and I want you to look at a specific workflow for the Hugo static site generator. Hugo's hosted on GitHub, and they use GitHub Actions as a part of their CI workflow. And so I want you to take a look at that. And last but not least, I want you to register for session 2. So the link for session 2 will be live, if not later today, sometime this weekend, definitely by Monday morning. So I want you to register for session 2 as well. So to help you out with these workflows that I want you to look at, I've got the links here on the screen, and I'm not going to drop them into the chat because my keyboard probably fell asleep right now. I'm using my mouse. But take these URLs. I also have QR codes if you have a phone nearby, if you want to capture that QR code and email it to you or text it to you. That's another way to follow these links. So I'll leave these here on the screen for a moment. And I'm also going to go to the comments here just to see if I missed anybody. I want to, again, say thanks for everybody for joining. Looks like we're all pretty much caught up there. So you got those links? Everybody good? You good? Okay, cool. We're going to move on to the next slide. If you've never seen GitHub Actions before, if this is your first time looking at a GitHub Actions workflow, so I'm throwing these repositories at you like I am confident that you know what you're going to be looking at, right? And I said, I want you to look at the workflows. I want you to look at the pipelines. I want you to see how everything's laid out. Look at the errors. Look at the workflows that pass, et cetera, et cetera. and just kind of absorb the way the code is written in the workflow file and the code is displayed in the pipeline in GitHub Actions. You might be like, what the heck are you talking about, guy? I don't even know what a GitHub Actions is. I got you. Okay. So this is a reference. It's not a requirement for your homework for this session, but if you need some a reference for GitHub Actions, I happen to have a course on GitHub Actions. It's on LinkedIn Learning. It's called Learning GitHub Actions, and it takes you from the basics of getting into GitHub, setting up workflows in GitHub Actions, and really understanding the different parts of a workflow, all the way up to, I think you create a custom workflow for yourself. You don't have to go through all that. This is just a reference for you if you need some help with the actual assignment, looking at the Hello World workflow and looking at the Hugo static site generator test workflow specifically. So if you need access to GitHub, when you go to this link or you scan this QR code, however you land up on the page that's behind these two links, you'll have access to view this class for a short period of time. It might be 24 or 48 hours from the first time that you click play on the link, right? If anything happens where you can't view the content or it's asking you to pay or something like that, send me a message or comment in the event page for this space, and I'll try to work something out for you, right? This is my first time sharing a course this way. Usually I share courses when I publish them the first time, or maybe I make an update to the course, then I'll share it out. I'll say, hey, everybody, take a look at this course. It's available for you to view, or check out this update, whatever the case is. Or perhaps you already have a subscription to LinkedIn Learning and you've saved this course, so it's in your library. Just go back to it if you need, a reference for GitHub Actions. But whatever the case is, if you can't get to it, let me know and we'll work something out so that you can get to this course. Or just Google Learning GitHub Actions. There are books, there are web pages, there's stuff on YouTube. So you don't have to mess around with my content. There may be some stuff out there that people say is better. I don't know. Maybe I'm biased, but there's a lot of great resources out there to get you up to speed with GitHub Actions. I will say though, this is sort of the bridge to the sessions that we'll be having from here on out, where we're really going to hit the road in getting active with some of the tools that bring these processes together. I could do a whole nother session here, or I should have added another slide here, because I really kind of trip on the way that people get stuck on CI/CD tools instead of the CI/CD process itself. You might have noticed in this particular session, I didn't mention a CI/CD tool until we got here to the actual homework, the exercises, because we actually kind of have to see the engine, and the definitions behind this stuff, right? But for CI, CD, and CD, you don't have to have a platform, right? It makes it easy for us as operators and automators and DevOps practitioner to have these tools to work with, so we're not reinventing the wheel every time or writing some unsupported code, that we have to deal with for years on end. But you could do CI from your command line. You could do CD from your command line. You could do CI/CD from a Raspberry Pi box running Alpine. You don't need a fancy system behind it. But what I'm really trying to say is, I want you as a graduate of CI/CD summer school to really understand the processes, the meanings behind CI, CD, and CD instead of the actual tool. Once you get the meaning, you understand the purposes of these processes, and you understand how to apply your craft as an automator in the actual workflow, you got it. You could pick up any particular tool and run with it because you understand the purpose, right? And that's really what I'm trying to deliver. Okay, let's see if we got another slide after this. No, that's the last slide. So like I said, I'm not going to hold you long. We've been hanging out here for far too long already as it is. I will share one more comment here from Frosty. She's an SRE. She's worked with Jenkins pipelines with Dev and QA folks. And yeah, she's applied these to make their lives easier. So yeah, automation can keep people happy indeed. All righty, here I'm looking at my instructions to see what I need to do. Okay, we've gone over the homework. Let's get this out of the way. I just want to thank you all again for joining me. I really, really do appreciate your time and attention. There's probably a dozen, if not more, other things that you can be doing right now. But if you're live with me from Cameroon, from Memphis, Tennessee, shout out to Memphis, or from Minneapolis, Minnesota, thanks for hanging out with me today. I really, really do appreciate it. And also to the folks on the replay, thank you for actually taking some time out of your day for watching the stream. I'm looking forward to seeing what you think about these homework assignments. If you got any questions or problems with the course, or you need other references, whatever the case is, drop something in the event chat, and I will do my best to respond to you as quickly as I can. I'm going to get that registration link up for the next session up soon. Again, it might be Sunday. It's the weekend, right? But I will have it ready for you no later than Monday morning, but keep an eye out for it just in case it comes sooner than that. So with that, I want to say thank you. I hope you have a great weekend wherever you are, and I look forward to seeing you next Friday for what session is it? For session 3, which will be session 2 in the title of CI/CD Summer School. All right, see you soon.